And action.
Ow! Hey, it's Kevin and Fred. Do you have a referral for us here in Phoenix? There are 30,000 agents here that you could send them to. Why us? Well, for one thing, we'll keep you updated and you'll never have to track down your commission.
We'll also make you look really good to your client. And best of all, it helps us keep all this content free. So go to kevinandfred.com/referral to make the introduction. We'll take great care of them.
All right, welcome back to the Kevin and Fred Show. And this week, as you know, my guest is Mr. Ron Patulski. Ron, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you, Kevin?
I'm doing really good. You know, I gotta be honest, Ron. I'm really excited to record this with you today, and I'm excited for the listeners as well because you and I didn't really have a prep call. We haven't really talked a whole lot recently. In fact, you and I were messaging each other back and forth, and I was like, let's catch up, but let's do it. Let's record the conversation. Let's do it on the podcast. So everyone's going to hear stuff for the first time, like I am and like you are. So I thought that would be kind of a cool way to do this. So thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it, Ron.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Who knows what's going to come about?
Right? Exactly. It's part of the reason why I do this thing. I just love to pick people's brain, really smart people's brain, and like learn what they're doing and what they've done in the past and what, kind of what they're thinking. So I'm excited to where this conversation can go. So, Ron, let's start here. For the person that maybe doesn't know you yet, that maybe they don't have an experience with you like I have, tell us a little bit about like who you are, what you do, and we'll kind of go backwards from there, kind of how you got here.
Okay. Well, I'm presently developing a company where we started 2 years ago after leaving another company that we were instrumental in building a division with. And it's called Your Performance People. And I partner with my wife and my daughter, and it's a coaching and talent development company. And talent development meaning helping people, bringing out the talent in individuals as leaders, as salespeople, or whatever role that they're playing. And so leading up to this, I have been and my wife as well. My wife, Kate, and we've been in the coaching business professionally for over 23 years. So, we had, and
so it's been really, a little while.
It has been. And I got to tell you, I truly mean this. We have been so blessed, Kevin, because 23 years ago, we were working as a client actually with a company, and he decided, it was Mike Ferry, decided to get into the coaching business. And so we knew his systems, and I got to say, back then we didn't know what coaching was. Nobody really did. We just, we'd get together, the few coaches that, we started initially with, we'd get together and say, hey, Kevin, what are you going to talk about this week? And we had these agendas. And what's really interesting is we've had the privilege, my wife and I, to see the coaching business transform to where it is today, and over a 23-year period. And when I say we're really blessed is I've got, and my wife as well, we've got about 20,000 hours each of coaching people and being in their minds and their hearts and their souls, and help in assisting and partnering with them through all kinds of business ventures, business issues, personal issues that, would impact their business. And so it truly has been pretty amazing. I don't know, like I always say to people that want to get into the coaching business, find a way to be able to get clock hours. And that was the one thing that we had. We got the clock hours, and boy.
Yeah, you do. Well, you both have enough to master it twice. I mean, that's
right.
You both have 2 lifetimes worth of experience. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty amazing. I know a lot of real estate coaches and non-real estate. I mean, just business in general. Yeah. And the reality is that it's not for everyone. And it's even for the people that like to help other people and they like to, I'll say, coach and mentor, where, I consider myself, I love to share information and I like to coach and I like to mentor. I don't like to be a coach, right? Because it really takes a special individual. I think of the work that people like you do, and one of our mutual friends is also my coach, Mr. Glenn Neely, who I think of like what Glenn does, and I don't know how he's put up with me for so long. And so many of the people that you've worked with over the years that I know, and it's really special what you guys do. It takes a different type of person. So, it's not just a heart for helping other people. There's something more there. What do you think that is, like, that's allowed you to coach for so long now? I mean, 23 years is that's a while.
Yeah, it is. Well, when I was at KW Maps and helping building that, partnering with, we had a great run, 7 years I was there and helped build it. And, I would say that when I was interviewing coaches, and I was, I hired over 300 coaches when I was there.
Wow.
So, yeah. And one of the things that I noticed with people that thought they wanted to be a coach, some people want to be a trainer when there's nothing wrong with that, right? A trainer, a presenter. And so it's a different feel, because when you stand in front of a room, you're eyeball to eyeball with people. They're smiling, they come up and they say, wow, this was amazing. And you hallucinate that you made a difference. All right. And you do, right, in some way. And so if you're the kind of person that likes that kind of feedback, and there's some people that really, thrive on that, then that's maybe a better way to go. If you're the kind of person that doesn't really have that need, but wants to make a profound difference in people's life and impact people's lives, and like the strategy of partnering, then being a coach potentially is a way to go. What I found is coaching, though, one thing about coaching is, if I was coaching you, Kevin, and we have a coaching call, we could have some difficult conversations.
Yeah.
And I hang up as a coach and I think, I hope you're okay. Right. And I don't know what kind of response is. And so coaching is because it goes and it's activating a different parts of your brain. You're getting to the point where you don't know whether you're making a difference. Kate and I always talk about this as like, people say, well, how'd the call go? Right. If I get somebody that's in a place where they really need some coaching, I can't honestly say I know. It's to be determined. Right? What did you take away? What did you process? What neural connections did you make after the fact? Because it is that type of process.
Yeah, it really is. And, what's funny too is, well, one of the things I found, I've coached a few people, not a lot, because I did it more in a lot of ways for selfish reasons, because I wanted it to help me to be able to coach the people in my organization better. Mm-hmm. So I felt like if I had some more experience with people, someone we probably both know, her name is Corinne Wynn. She's a Keller Williams realty agent. She's also here in the Phoenix area, and someone I've just been friends with for a long time. One of the things she said to me, said, one of the benefits you might get out of it that I received from it was the ability to coach somebody and offer feedback and suggestions and kind of be in the trenches with them without being tied to the results. Right. And because we tend to, I know for me, I should say I tend to, and some of my other friends that run real estate businesses tend to be tied to the results of the agents in our organization that we're coaching. And so when someone else is, if they're going to write a check, and it changes the dynamic, it changes the relationship, and they still have to do the work after the call. Just like I have to do the work after the call. I talked to Glenn today. I had my coaching call with him today, and I have to go and do the work today that we talked about. Otherwise, and it doesn't change Glenn's life. Right. Whether I do it or not. I know he worries about it because he cares about me. We've been in it for so long. But yeah, that coaching piece it's, I think, a lot harder than most people give it credit for.
Yeah, for sure. And, the one thing that I would say, I'll give you a little secret about coaching that I learned over the 23 years is you're asking questions, you're having a conversation with a coaching client. In some form, you're actually speaking to yourself as well. And so the secret to coaching is you're actually coaching yourself while you're doing that in a reflective way. So for what I mean by that specifically, if I ask you a question, are you, what about this? And then, invariably that comes back. Am I doing that in my life? Or am I doing that? Am I doing that in this situation? Or do I have a situation that's similar that I'm asking a client to do, but I'm not doing? So it's really becomes a mirror for your life.
Yeah,
and I think that's another huge benefit that I think Kate and I have appreciated over the 23 years.
That's really cool. And that explains, one of the things, Ron, I've never told you, but is everyone, and we know you and I, you were at MAPS for 7 years, as you mentioned, and so our paths crossed for quite some time.
Yeah.
We know a lot of the same people, and the thing that I love about you and Kate is everyone behind your back says the most amazing things about both of you because of the level that you care and the level that I think the seriousness in which you take that. You know, you mentioned like, hey, it's really a coaching call for myself too, and I think when you take it on that level, the clients feel that impact probably as much or more.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, that feedback. And so we definitely, I was very blessed when I graduated from college, and I think I got this from Stephen Covey actually in one of his books. It might have been The 7 Habits or First Things First, when he said that you go ahead and write your eulogy, and what do you want people to say about you? And I use this concept in 2 ways. First of all, we have, Kate and I together have three adult children now. They're in their 30s. Our baby is going to be 29 in November. But anyways, I fast forwarded, in the beginning and thought, okay, when they go to college, for example, and we drop them off, get them settled in, and now they're with their roommate or roommates, depending on what the situation is. And one of the roommates says, tell me about your dad. What do I want them to say? And so what Stephen Covey was saying, and I agree, is you get to write that script by who you're being.
Yeah.
And so I've endeavored, and, hey, we're all human and we all, are not perfect. But I've endeavored to be able to be that way, and not because you get adjusted to it. It becomes a way of life. All right. And then when you really do care about people, it's authentic. And, I have a lot of empathy. Both of I have a lot of empathy for people. And yet as a coach, it's really important to understand that empathy is important, but part of empathy is having a respect for somebody and asking the tough questions too.
Yeah.
And so that's the other dynamic.
So Ron, you and Kate are both, I mean, you're extremely nice people. And sometimes it can feel, in my experience, I can feel not nice to sometimes ask those hard questions. Mm-hmm. Was that something you had to get over as a coach, or was that ever a challenge for you? Or was that?
Yes, it was. In the beginning, absolutely. Absolutely it was, because, and here's the misnomer that I learned, and I don't know if this is actually the case for other people, but I thought I was doing somebody a service, and by being empathetic with them, and they didn't need the empathy. People were saying it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, and it wasn't okay for them. And so, in that process, I realized that asking the tough question is really true empathy. It's not avoiding it; it's actually doing it.
Wow. Okay, that is a paradigm shift there. That empathy is actually asking that tough question.
That's right. Yeah. If you truly care about something. So, for example, it's like, think about this: if somebody is in their car and they're heading down a road going off a cliff. All right. Being empathetic and caring about them is, saying to them, hey, get their attention and say, hey, can I share something with you? With the direction you're going, at the end there's a cliff, and I don't know if you want to go off it, but I just wanted to make you aware of it. All right. In this case, I'm going to make them aware of it, but it's just the question if they're heading that direction, and there's no ever judgment around it. Qualifying by saying, Kevin, based on what you've been saying and what you've experienced, tell me about your experience. And then you would experience and say, well, is it possible that you continue doing that it's not going to end well? And you're, and it's not saying that, it's not saying, hey, this isn't going to end well for you, Kevin. Is there a possibility that it would? Getting you to consider. And here's why that becomes important from a coaching perspective is when you run that, when somebody runs that through their brain, there's a new commitment that gets made. It's called commitment through involvement. And this is why, frankly, the stuff that I'm sharing to you right now is what makes our coaching different than most other coaching companies. most coaching companies, and there's nothing against it, there's a place in the world for this, are more transactional. They're more logistical. They're more systems oriented. Our coaching includes that, but our coaching includes the other piece, which is the invisible piece, which really makes it whole brain. And we're whole organisms, the left and the right side of the brain. And that's what makes our coaching different. And the kind of competencies that that we're sharing now or talking about right now are what really make coaching.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I have a friend that you coached for quite some time. I think you actually coached him personally, Matthew Fedek, and he would always, tell me about, not always, he often told me about the calls you got, the impact that you were having, quite frankly.
He's an amazing guy, by the way.
He is. Like, let's be honest, Matt is a one-of-a-kind guy.
Yes. Yeah.
I love him to death. I think the world of him. And he would, tell me constantly when we'd be kind of comparing notes and, masterminding with our business and stuff. And he'd refer back to different conversations he'd had with you. And it felt like it was never, ever about real estate or business for that matter. It was always that kind of that whole organism, the whole brain, the whole person type of thing that you just mentioned. And I got to agree, there's probably not nearly as much of that out there as we probably need.
Right. And I would say this, the reason our relationship was like that was because that's where he was. So it was more about leadership competencies. It wasn't like how to sell a house. All right.
Yeah.
Our coaching though is, what really makes it interesting and very effective is we go through if you say, hey, I want to do 50 transactions, I'm doing 32 right now. And my goal for next year is 50 or 75 or 100, whatever that is. Our coaching absolutely will hit the mark with that. And what helps the progress and create permanent change and less frustration for people is coaching through the lens of the other side as well. So now it becomes whole brain, and a coaching call in that instance will include what's happening and analyzing that, your numbers, your P&L, whatever that may be. What systems do you have in place, and what are lacking? What would you do there? Now that sounds familiar in most coaching conversations, right? But the difference is now it's weaving in through your vision and your strategy, which is now that invisible piece, along with your connection, your communication and your empathy with people as well. So what we're really doing there, what we just hit, is make it a whole brain and whole purpose, or whole human, whole person. Is we've got hand, what's going on. We've got head, the systems and the conceptual processes. We've got heart, which is your connection with people, and you have an element of spirit, like the bigger part of us in that vision and strategy. And so you're getting the whole concept there.
Let me ask you a question. So you just kind of sparked something for me, Ron. Like, so when you say that, something that comes to mind is oftentimes I see, and I'm going to use a real estate agent example because I'm in real estate, and most of the listeners here are in real estate, right?
Yeah, and we do so much. Real estate has been such a great, it's such a great industry. We've been involved in it for 23 years as coaches, and I was a realtor, before that. So
it's also like a great training ground for business, for other businesses in a lot of ways. Because if you can run a great real estate business, you can run a great business. Period. Is one of the things I've learned, but. So sometimes I will talk to, or I've experienced, I've known, and I know I'm both of these people on certain scales, in different examples, where you might have two people that, quite frankly, are equal in skill set. Like one's not distinguishably better than the other, but one may run a business that runs and makes, I'll call it, 3-4 times as much money, or sells 3-4 times as many houses as the other. And there doesn't appear to me to be, it's not like, oh, well, she's a whole lot smarter than she is, or he's way smarter than her. Why are they, there's not something that's obvious. Is that is that the inside piece? It's not necessarily the business piece of that. Like,
Yeah.
what makes those differences?
Yeah, that's the invisible piece. Yes, absolutely. That ends up being the right side and the different factors. And it can be, I mean, there's so many different, there's so many different things that it could be, but essentially it comes down to that invisible stuff, the visible part. And we never know until we get into it. And, Gavin, one of the things that we find, we get a lot of folks that have been in coaching for years and they're frustrated. They don't want to talk about, it's been so left brain that it's just, my coach talks about the same thing over, what you do, what are your numbers? And that's absolutely necessary. I'm not knocking that in any way, but it's also, though, where people have breakthroughs is with the invisible piece. Like, how do they view that? What is their attitude? What kind of perception do they have towards that? You shift somebody's perception about something, it can be a game changer. And so these are these invisible things that happen. I'll give you an example. I had a guy, a client that I'm personally coaching, and he had been working with a really good coach for 5 years and he had a team, was attempting to get out of personal production. We started in May of last year, and he was 78% of the business he was generating at the year before. We looked at what it would take, and for him, it was invisible stuff. It was perception. It was some of the beliefs that he had, different things. Well, anyways, make a long story short, 3 months went by. We put a plan together, and he executed on that plan. And actually, by October 1st, he was out of production. This year, he's having a record year. He just went over 2 million in GCI.
Wow.
And had never done that before. Yeah. So that's an example. There's no, and there's nothing, it does nothing about me. It has to do with you just tweak the different things. The potential of human beings is incredible. And the 23 years of doing this, had the privilege of being inside of people's minds and their hearts and their souls. And I can't even articulate the power of human beings and what they do in spite of, themselves,
Yeah.
in spite of the way they look at the world,
Yeah.
and we all have our stories, so to speak, if you want to put it that way. Some empower us and some don't empower us.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the truer statements is, we all have stories, we all have lenses. I've heard it said this way, like you're just making it up anyways.
Right.
And so, some of those things that we make up or we tell ourselves, they help us move forward. And some of those things that we tell ourselves holds us back. And in worst cases, sometimes even sends us backwards from where we are. Let me ask you this, how does somebody know if coaching's right for them? I mean, listen, I'm a big believer in coaching. I'm the guy that I don't think I've had less than one coach now for a decade.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people don't dip their toes in coaching because they're not really sure about it, or they're not sure if they should even have one. How does somebody know if, hey, I should probably explore this, or I should for sure go hire a coach?
Yeah. I simplify it. Here's what I've noticed with it is if there's a gap, all right, a gap of if they have enough awareness of where they are compared to where they want to be.
Okay.
If there's a gap. And usually if there's pain in that gap, that's usually the start of them, for somebody who's never been in coaching, for them to take a look at it. And invariably what happens is you've been in coaching, you know me, I've never been in coaching. We get talking. I start to share some things with you and you say, well, have you ever considered coaching? No, I haven't. And so, your suggestion, your influence, my respect for you may have me start to look into coaching. Right? So that's the part that I would say that it's pain is the main driver. Now, in order to have a successful coaching relationship, from our experience and what we've experienced over the years is a couple of things. First of all, you have to have a gap. we've actually experienced somebody where, let's say maybe, Fred is getting coaching and you're thinking, well, maybe I'll get coaching. Right. But your life is pretty good and your business is pretty good and you're really not seeing much of a gap, and you've got this handled, that handled. I don't know how a coach is going to help you if there's no gap, because coaching is in the gap.
Got it. Okay. Well, let me ask you this. You just made me think of something. It's because I've had a few conversations with some really highly productive people that don't have coaches.
Right.
And I guess I've just always wondered, maybe this is just my belief system, or maybe it's because I just enjoy that coaching relationship so much. But what do you think about the person's like, no, like, yeah, I'm doing good. What do I need a coach for? I guess maybe I just answered my own question. Maybe you just answered a minute ago when you talked about there's pain in the gap. Maybe if you're not even acknowledging the pain in the gap, then it doesn't matter. Like, you might not even realize it.
Yeah. Well, so just in my humble opinion, this has been my experiences. I don't mess with people that, think they're doing well. I mean, I'm not going to go to you and say, Kevin, I think you should get into coaching because you could do a lot better. Now, because it doesn't, it may not register with you. We can only move to the level of awareness that we have. And so how many of us don't know? And here's what is the most common thing that we hear when people, finally get into coaching is they go ahead and say, wow, I wish I had done this 5 years ago. Is that not true?
Yeah, every time.
Yeah. So what is that? It's a lack of awareness. If they had the awareness 5 years ago that there was a gap and that they wanted to bridge that gap, and they looked at, okay, how do I bridge the gap? What are my options? Well, there's this thing called coaching. Well, let me check that out. And there's this thing called training. Okay, let me check that out. And then they make it, then they make a choice based on what they see as the best vehicle for them. But it's awareness. Awareness is the critical piece.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's so good. So, in kind of switching this a little bit, let's say I'm that person and I go, you know what, gosh, I think I do need some coaching. That there's a gap there. It's painful. How do I know if I have the right coach, or how do I know if I found somebody I should hire, if you will, as my coach?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that, that's a great question. I think, first of all, the clearer they are on what the gap is, I think the easier it is to recognize the right coach.
Okay.
All right. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is, at some level, it's important that there's a level of connection or a level of understanding, like a somewhat of a comfort level. But I'm going to qualify that, because great coaches, it's not about being comfortable with your coach. It's about what happens in that coaching space. And so if that coach it makes you comfortable, but they're asking you the tough questions, that are appropriate for you with your situation, whatever, you got the makings of a good coaching relationship. But if they're comfortable and they're not asking that, then that's a different story. The one thing that, Kate and I have painfully experienced over the years is you work with a client and they're doing really well, and you get comfortable with that. And that's the kiss of death, because now in that relationship, because you've gone asleep as a coach and you're not challenging that client. And so that client is now, feeling comfortable, and there's nothing wrong with them, experiencing the success. But a great coach is always casting a possibility by challenging, what that client is doing in that coaching conversation.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can see where that's shown up a lot. So you mentioned the name of your company is called Your Performance People. I heard that correctly, right? Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yourperformancepeople.com is our website, and there's a lot of great stuff on there to check us out. We coach. we've got coaching programs, we've got specialized things that we can specialize for, for folks that want to do something, whether it's, well, now it's more virtual than on site, but
Right.
we use some very powerful assessments. So there's some things like bigger teams. If they're looking for, Kevin, here's the thing that I noticed, and actually, I think I became aware of this because somebody brought it to my attention. They said that what we do in our coaching, actually, the more people have done and the more things that they've been involved in, the more they see, the value and of what our coaching can do, because it's what's out there, but there's these pieces, these invisible pieces that are really the difference, that make the difference. And so we tend to have, and it doesn't mean that somebody who hasn't done that is not a match for us, because we have a lot of clients like that as well. And they just start to realize, like, wow, this is amazing, from their perspective with the kind of progress that they're making. So, that's something we really notice, that people really appreciate the more things they've done. I'll give you an example. This was years ago. It was an original equipment manufacturer. Met this guy at a entrepreneurial group that we had. He was a speaker. So at the break, I went up to him. I said, "Man, what you do is interesting." And he goes, "Yeah, let's connect." So I remember I called him, set an appointment, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come over to my office, and I want to find out what you do and everything." So I remember sitting down with him, and he says to me, "So what's your program?" Like, because he had been, and these guys were a sophisticated company. Their executive leadership team had done, all kinds of different things. Well, to make a long story short, I started asking questions. We started working, we produced an engagement where we were working with their leadership team, and ultimately they sold the company because they made some moves that really, they were very smart people. But what we were doing in the kind of work was activating new things in them that was taking their ability to a whole nother level.
That's really cool.
So, yeah. And in fact, that the president of the company reached out to me recently to, on Facebook, or messaged me and checked in with me, because he's actually, he's coming out of retirement, because he got a big chunk when he sold the company. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
so obviously, my experience with you is through real estate, but you clearly don't just coach folks in the real estate space. Right. Like, if someone says to you, who's your ideal client? How do you answer that?
Our ideal client, I would say, is a person that's in a business that is truly looking to take what they're doing to a whole nother level. All right. And that there may be systems that will do that for them. It may be, what they're not doing in terms of analyzing and having things in place, or it may be, some of the things on the other side, which are the invisible piece. But here's the part that, our ideal client is somebody that understands it's a do with process and not a do to process. We don't have a magic wand. We're not going to wave our 23 years experience over you, and you're going to, and so there's a commitment. So our expectation, part of our coaching process, you're a coaching client with us, we will remind you of your calls electronically. You will get emails where you click on a link to do a call prep form. We expect that call prep form to be done, because that is the shape. If you're not going to fill out a prep call, or you don't know what you want to talk about in the call, then from our perspective, we ask, like, what's up with that?
Yeah. Why have the call? Well, I mean, if you're gonna spend money, you're gonna spend time,
right.
Investing in your business. You should probably know what the direction is when you go into to spend that time.
Right. And personally for us it's not about, we don't want your money. We want your commitment and we want to partner with you to be part of the vision that you have and to go through the muck if we need to, to take it to, I mean, we've coached people through all kinds of health challenges, bankruptcy. I mean, you name it, relationship challenges, just you name it, because you're dealing with people, you're dealing with human beings.
Yeah, that's gosh, that's so cool, Ron. I appreciate that. So let's do this because I know we're running up on time. I just glanced up and realized, like, wow, we've that went fast. One of the things I wanted to make sure I asked you today before we wind up is you have such great background and insight on things, and you've worked with so many performers. If I said to you, hey, Ron, what are the top 2-3 pieces of advice for being a better performer, for, as I would say, kicking more ass in life, in a business, etc. When I say that to you, what are the first 3 things that come to mind?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is awareness. Awareness in and of itself is transformational. You can't change something you're not aware of. And so we have blind spots. All of us do. And blind spots are created by strengths. If we're really good at looking at north, and we're looking at north and we're really good looking north, then we're blind to south.
Right.
And yet in the world, south exists, and it's a piece that, so critically you could have that missing. And when somebody starts to recognize that there's a south, their whole world can transform. So that would be the first. Awareness is critical.
Okay.
That's number one. And, part of our coaching process, we don't coach anybody. When somebody enrolls in our coaching, part of that process is they make it a one-time investment in an habitual thinking assessment, where we really look at what are their thinking strengths, and based on those strengths, what are the blind spots that come along with those strengths. So there's no perfect place to be, and that awareness around that can be a game changer for people.
Okay.
And for people who, like, for example, that can be very telling for somebody that's a leader and they have turnover, or a lot more turnover than they want. That likely there's something in their thinking and there's a blind spot there that they're not even aware of. Well, if they become aware of that, they now have a choice or an option to do something about that, either for themselves or maybe they hire somebody in their place. It creates a lot of different options. So, first, the awareness is critical. The next piece is being open. In other words, realizing it's a do with process and not a do to process. That becomes critical. And the third one is, if somebody's doing really well, it's a rare person. We tend to get our attention when we have pain. Most people, like, if things are going great in any area of our life, most people are the type that go, let me rip this thing apart and reinvent it. We just don't do that.
Yeah.
And so it goes back to, there's recognizing that there's got to be a need, there's got to be a gap there, for somebody.
Yeah. And so often I know when there's, when things are going good, or even if they just look like they're going good, it's just a lot harder to recognize the gap.
Yes.
Even though it might be there.
Yep.
It's a lot harder to recognize it and then therefore acknowledge it. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, I look at it right now with where the world is. I mean, are people prepared for certain things that may occur? It's not being negative, but that's being aware.
Yeah. No, it really is. I think that's a great point. All right. Let me ask you this before we wrap up. What should we have talked about? What did I miss? Or anything else kind of burning desire of yours that we should make sure we share today before we end our podcast?
Well, I would share just a couple of things. First of all, I would just say, for those people that are listening to this who are in the real estate industry, what a wonderful opportunity. What a great industry. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of changes, but there's huge opportunities there. Huge opportunities. And, I'm going to put a plug for coaching because, for those who have a gap, those opportunities are, you see the opportunities at a whole different level. So that would be the first thing. And the second thing that I would say is, I mean, it's no mystery here. The world is different and will continue to be different. It's part of our evolution. It's part of, being a human being. And so we've got a huge shift of that's coming, with that. And I can talk a lot more about it. I won't get into it, but there's really a shift in human consciousness going on right now. And so, and one of it is being, is coming back to being a human being and really looking at what's important and, and looking at our fellow human beings and realizing that humanity is going to go to a different place. And perhaps, we live in the probably the most abundance time that we've ever lived in. And we take a lot for granted too.
Yeah.
So, kind of get grounding in that can make a big difference. So, and one of the things that I found with all that's happened, we're working with more and more people. There's more and more people who are struggling, to turn around something in their life. And so, we've designed a specific program that spans 90 days that digs into that and transforms whatever may be going on in that particular area of their life. And we're very specific about who we take. The commitment level, is, there's got to be enough pain there to have a commitment level that, they're sick and tired of being sick and tired about whatever's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool. I got one thing I'll end with too, is I think you're right. And I'm guilty of it to an extent. I think especially, I'll say early on in kind of the shutdown of everything, it was really easy to say when things go back to normal. And I think, it's definitely, I can't remember who said this to me a couple of weeks ago, but probably let's redefine the word normal. Because there's a lot of things that have changed this year in 2020 that just like, they're not going to be the way they were before. A lot of things have actually changed forever. And we're going to have to, adjust and adapt, and that's probably the gift of it too.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting about the word normal? It's a perception. What's normal to one person is not normal to another. But again, that's a whole nother story as well. So, lastly, I would just say that if there's anybody interested in what we do, they can go to yourperformancepeople.com. If somebody would like to explore a potential coaching relationship with us, simply just go to coachwithypp.com, and there's a very quick thing to fill out, and we'll contact you, and we'll go down the road to see where you're at and what can happen as a potential partnership with us at our company.
Fantastic. And we'll link to those there here in the show notes. So they're there, easy for folks to just click on too. So awesome. Ron, I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule today to do this with me. It was a blast to just talk and catch up a little bit and kind of learn more about what you're up to these days, because it's been a few years since we had a chance to chat. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. Have a great day. All right, buddy?
You too. All right, guys, we'll talk to you next week.